One of our guests at Nomad Capitalist Live posed a very interesting question. If you could only have 3 passports, which ones would you get and why? And so today I'm going to walk you through my own dream passport portfolio with that restriction of only being able to have 3. I'm going to tell you how and why I would build that so that you can think about how you'd build your own passport portfolio. And everybody who joined us at this year's Nomad Capitalist Live got one of these great Barry Goldwater mugs. If it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson. We talk about how to get second passports, reduce your taxes overseas, protect your assets, and a lot more. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply if you'd like our help in building your own passport portfolio and building your own Nomad Capitalist life. I started obtaining multiple passports, not only because I felt like the United States, where I'm from, was going in the wrong direction. I ultimately renounced that citizenship. But I wanted to build my own personal sovereignty. And as I traveled and lived around the world and accumulated passports, I realized this is kind of fun, and I like the various identities that I can create. And when I go to a place that I feel good about and I think there's a future there, it's kind of fun to add that country's passport to my portfolio. So, I recently started the process in Cambodia to get Cambodian citizenship because I've been going there for a long time, and I like what they're doing. The country has grown dramatically. I'm excited to be a part of what they're building in Cambodia and what they're doing in the greater ASEAN region, the 10, potentially soon to be 11 country region in Southeast Asia. And so my dream passport portfolio would encompass long-term macro plays on regions that I feel like are going in the right direction, not only for investability, but for livability. And for me, what I've always told you is it comes down to culture. There are certain cultures that welcome people, and there are certain cultures that push people away. There are certain cultures that are open, and there are others that act like they're the only game in town, and they don't really, and you should be happy to have them. And so that's how I look at the Dream Passport portfolio. If I were a citizen of a Western country, I realize it's hard to give up that passport, but in my dream portfolio, I wouldn't likely have a traditional Western passport. Now, I already gave up the U.S., I understand a lot of our clients who are from the United States, they don't want to give up their U.S. passport. They just want to add on top of that. In my dream portfolio, we're going to be detached from anything that's going to add toxicity in the entire world. And so the United States geopolitically, I think, is rather toxic right now. From an investment point of view, I mean, the U.S. is irritating a lot of countries. I think you're going to see further restrictions on Americans moving and investing abroad. Not that you can't go anywhere, but I think there's going to be certain countries that are going to make it harder. And so, quite frankly, I just don't want a passport like that in my portfolio. If you're Canadian or if you're German, maybe you can keep that one. But in my portfolio, I'm getting rid of those because I think they're going in the wrong direction. I think you can live a life without them. So my main passport in this scenario would be something from Eastern Europe. It could be in the EU. There is a way that certain people can get citizenship, let's say Romania, for example, or Bulgaria has not as much of a fast-track program anymore, but they've got a program where you can get citizenship there. I would choose kind of my main passport as a place that I enjoyed living. And so I have a home in Belgrade, I have a home in Tbilisi. Those passports could be interesting. Where you would want to live, I mean, that's up to you. I know people like living in Sofia or Plovdiv in Bulgaria. People like living in Bucharest. Many people have followed me to Belgrade, Tbilisi. Montenegro is another one that we heard a lot about at our event this year. And so some of those passports you could get. Some of them, if you went and started a business and you were a serious person there, potentially, you could get a passport. Some of them you could go through, like in Bulgaria, they have an official program if you were willing to spend time there. Armenia is a passport you can get by descent. You can get it by naturalization with only living there for 2 to 3 years, depending on your situation. I think that they're a bit more non-aligned recently, so that could be interesting, although it's a little bit more difficult in terms of what's happened with Azerbaijan. But I would look at Eastern Europe, and what I've seen is, Serbia and Georgia's passports have dramatically improved. Really, a lot of Eastern European passports have dramatically improved. Russia went from about 55 visa-free countries in the late 2000s to well over 100 now. Now, a Russian passport obviously brings a lot of toxicity with it these days, but that's just an example for how good these other passports have gotten. So a Serbian passport, you can go to Europe, you can go to Russia, you can go to China. Georgia's passport now, you can pretty much go anywhere in South America. You're getting better visa-free access throughout Asia. So like Georgians can go to Thailand now, visa-free. And so you might think, oh, that's pretty standard fare. These passports weren't that good 10 years ago, but they've gotten good because most of the world has opened up to them. Where can't you go with an Eastern European passport? What I would call the CUNA countries, Canada, US, New Zealand, and Australia, as well as with those, the UK and Ireland. And so you would need another passport to go to, let's say you want to go to London. I think that's maybe one you want to keep in the mix. So that's where I would start. Number 2 would be my investment passport. And this might be the third most important passport in the list, but it's the one that I could obtain faster. And so I would look at something like Africa or Turkey. I'd be tempted to look at a Caribbean citizenship by investment, but I think that for the long-term benefits, I would want something that gives me access to up-and-coming countries. Now, Turkey, you basically have access to one country. That's not as attractive. What I like about Turkey's passport is you just buy a piece of real estate and you get the citizenship. You can sell the real estate 3 years from now. And it's so well connected that it just fits in for anyone who's traveling, especially in the global south. I fly Turkish Airways anywhere. You can fly, from Sao Paulo to Kuala Lumpur with one stop, and you can stay at your house in Istanbul. I like that. I also like, Botswana or Sao Tome and Principe's, new, passport programs. Because I think, being a member of, an African Union member state and other unions in Africa is going to be valuable long term. I struggle with, in this portfolio, giving up visa-free access to the UK and Ireland, because those are places that I would like to go to. They are visas that are harder to get. Personally, I could care less about going to the US or Canada. I've been to Australia once. That's enough. Thank you. New Zealand, beautiful country, but just, not really particularly interesting to me. I like what's up and coming. But I also think that the UK and Ireland would be nice to have. So I'd be tempted to look at a Caribbean citizenship by investment where I get that access. But I think, long term, if I had to, choose access to the global south, I would quite possibly do that. So I would look at Botswana or Sao Tome and Principe or Turkey. I don't think in an ideal portfolio, Egypt makes the cut. They've got a passport program in Africa. I think the number 3 passport is my real plan B. And so the third one that I would get, but probably the second most important, would be something in Latin America by naturalization, or if, let's say, Argentina rolls out this new citizenship by investment program that they've decreed needs to happen. What I like about most of the Latin American countries is they have that visa-free access to the UK and Ireland now. So Colombia, where I have a home, no longer has visa-free access to the UK, and so they don't count. Any passport you can get, you should get. And so in the not-too-distant future, I'm eligible to apply for Colombian citizenship. We'll see if I meet all the requirements. But, something like Brazil, for example. Now, in my personal case, this may not work, but, Joshua Sheets spoke at Nomad Capitalist Live about he gave birth. His wife gave birth in Brazil, and now they have a Brazilian child, and now they're going to go through the process of spending 1 year living in Brazil. You could marry a Brazilian, and you could have a 1 year pathway to citizenship. So those things may not apply to me. You could also live in Argentina for 2 years. If you can deal with the taxes, you can apply for citizenship there. And again, they're talking about rolling out a citizenship by investment program. That's something that we're tracking very closely here. Mexico is one. Again, if you have a child or you marry someone, you shorten the timeline to 2 years. Otherwise, it's 5 years. Uruguay is 3 years, and they've got a tax incentive. If you move there with your family, 5 years if you're single. And Uruguay actually has a great passport. And they've recently sorted out kind of an issue where, getting your second passport there wasn't as attractive. That's been sorted out. So, you've just seen, I've rattled off a number of countries that I would be willing to live in. For me, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, probably the strongest passports. I would live in Buenos Aires. I would certainly live in Mexico to get that passport. And then I would have my UK and Ireland visa-free access. So I have that kind of English-speaking corridor in the middle of the world. They're talking about potentially Argentina getting increased visa-free travel to some of those Western countries in the future. Even the U.S. has talked about potentially putting them back as a roadmap country for visa-free travel to the U.S. And so, my Latin American passport is going to be a place that for me personally, I don't want to spend as much time there because I love the momentum that I see in Asia, and increasingly I'm focused on Africa. I love some of the culture in Eastern Europe, the food, the wine, the operas. I mean, I like that. And so Latin America is a lesser piece in my life, but I would spend some amount of time there to get one of those passports. I mean, any of them, quite frankly, would be fine. I mean, I think Mexico may be the strongest one. And I've said, if you could give birth anywhere in the world right now, I might put Mexico pretty high up on the list. I think Mexico's going to be a great passport to have in the next 10 to 20 years. I don't know exactly which one I would pick in Eastern Europe or Latin America, but any of those would work. So bottom line, one Eastern European passport that I find livable and where I want to spend time. Number 2 would be a Plan B passport that I'm likely getting by naturalization, possibly speeding that up through something like marriage or having children, which in your case, possibly looking at Argentina's citizenship by investment. I think that could be very interesting for a high-quality passport. That's one that a lot of our clients are asking about, is how can I just make a donation or make an investment in Argentina? That program will be rolling out hopefully soon. And then number 3 would be the investment-themed third passport where I can have access to the places of tomorrow. I'm tempted to say Cambodia for this one also because of ASEAN access and being able to be part of fast-growing Asia. The reason I might not put that one as high is I think that, for me, I'm never going to be seen as an Asian. And most Asian countries have tax favorability and residence programs that encourage people with pretty much any passport to come. And unless you really wanted to buy land in Cambodia, I don't see what that adds. I don't see ASEAN as opening up as much as, let's say, some of the unions in Africa. And I feel like if I had to choose, I would probably not choose Cambodia. This is why it's so hard to choose just 3 passports, because for me, there's so many growth stories. There's so many places that I find fascinating. It's so hard to stick to 3. And so the bottom line with this passport portfolio is you'd have visa-free travel to pretty much everywhere in the world, except for potentially the U.S. and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, 4 countries I have very little interest in going to or being a part of. But you'd also have access potentially to open Balkan, if you were to be, let's say, Serbian or some other Balkan country. They have their own little union now. If you're, let's say, in Georgia or Armenia, you wouldn't have as much access, but I think there's benefits to being a citizen there. You'd have a Latin American citizenship, which would grant you access throughout, in many cases, Mercosur. If you're in Mexico, you're not going to have as many privileges there, but it's going to be a top-tier passport. And then you're going to have the up-and-comer, whether it's Turkey or Africa. That's the one that people are going to laugh at you for. And what I said at Nomad Capitalist Live was, you got to do more things people laugh at you for. Because people who moved to Singapore 40 years ago or Dubai 20 years ago, they all got laughed at. People are asking me, how can I buy real estate in Georgia at 1/5 the price it is now, the way you were talking about 10 years ago? And the answer is, you got to be laughed at. And so in building my dream passport portfolio, my dream is not to have only 3, but if I had to have 3, I would want one where I'm laughed at, because that means you're doing something right. And quite frankly, I really believe, and I've increasingly put my money where my mouth is with my investments. I believe that the West is going in the wrong direction. You see the UK and France talking about wealth taxes. Even in the US, there's been talk of that. I think if you're a successful entrepreneur or investor, you can make money anywhere. You can have access to invest in the United States or Europe. You can visit those places in many cases. You don't need to hold their passport. I think a passport portfolio should look to the future. Now, many of our clients say, hey, I want to keep my current citizenship. And no one here is going to push you to get rid of your current citizenship if you want to keep that. Obviously, there's no rule that you can only have 3. If you want our help to build your dream passport portfolio, you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, and we will be happy to help you. And it's just like when I go to my tailor. My tailor takes my measurements. He asks me what I want. He asks me the environment that I wear my clothes in. We go through a whole process of figuring out what my bespoke wardrobe should look like. The same thing is with your plan. Every plan for every client is different in some way because every client has different quote-unquote measurements. both your passports as well as the other things that you want to do with them, whether it means opening bank accounts, having a trust to protect your assets, maybe you move your company offshore. All these things factor in along with your passport portfolio. And that's the bespoke plan that we make for our clients at nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We charge a fee for that plan, and we give you unbiased advice, not just on one aspect, but all across the spectrum of how to be a true global citizen and take advantage of all this stuff better than anyone else does. We are not a passport mill. We do not simply, sell people shiny passports that you don't end up knowing what to do with. If you want the entire picture of becoming a true nomad capitalist, you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply and learn how we can help you.